going to talk about history of Ukraine facing centuries of conflicts. These are a list of major conflicts fought by Ukrainian people, or by regular armies during periods when the independent states existed on the modern territory of Ukraine, from the Kyivan Rus times to the present day. It also includes wars fought outside Ukraine by the Ukrainian military, and the Kyivan Rus is considered the first national Ukrainian state, together with Belarus and Russia. The Kingdom of Galicia, Volhynia, Ruthenia, as a potential successor, and after the period of domination by the Polish, Lithuanian Commonwealth, the Cossack states, the Cossack Hetmanate, and the Zaporizhia Sikh, the Ukrainian Cossacks, were also related to the Ottoman Empire and the Crimean Khanate. Having many conflicts with them by the late 18th centuries, Ukraine didn't have independent states anymore because it was ruled by the more powerful states of the time, namely the Ottoman Empire, the Russian Empire, and also the Austrian Empire. There were several internal armed conflicts between various Ukrainian ideological factions, sometimes with foreign support. In the first half of the 20th century, especially during the 1917 to 1921 Ukrainian War of Independence and the 1939 to 1945 Second World War, but modern Ukrainian military since 1917 have been mostly fighting with armies of neighboring states such as the Russian Provisional Government, Kyiv Bolshevik Uprising in November 1917, the Russian SSFR War of Independence 1917-1921, the Second Polish Republic, Polish-Ukrainian War 1918, 1919 Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, Second World War, and the post-war resistance, and since 2014, the Russian Federation, the Russo-Ukrainian War. All right. So this is all the war Ukrainian went through. All right. So for centuries, the region that now makes up the independent nation of Ukraine was a part of the Russian Empire, and then after the Russian Revolution and the Russian Civil War was a part of the Communist Soviet Union. In the list of wars and conflict involving Ukraine, those wars that took place while Ukraine was ruled by Russia and the Soviet Union only include those conflicts that took place on Ukrainian soil. Other Russian or Soviet wars, such as the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan that did not take place in Ukraine, are not included in this podcast. Part of what is now Western Ukraine belonged to the Austro-Hungarian Empire until the end of the World War I, 1914-1917. As part of the Russian Empire and part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Ukraine was part of the war between Russia against Germany and Austria-Hungarian, with part of Western Ukraine serving as the battlefield between the opposing armies following the Russian Revolution in 1917. The new Russian Bolshevik government of Vladimir Lenin signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germany and Austria-Hungary. Taking Russia out of the World War I, by the term of this treaty, large part of the Western Russia and most of the Ukraine were given to the occupied by Germany and the Austrians. The period from the start of this occupation by Germany and Austria-Hungary up until the Bolshevik communist victory in the Russian Civil War in 1921 was a period of great chaos and war in Ukraine. In the context of the Russian Civil War, multiple conflicts and sometimes competing for Ukrainian independence movements sprang up within the overall umbrella of the Russian Civil War. There were several foreign invasions, rebellions, uprisings, massacres, and other forms of military and political conflict. Then we have a civil war in Ukraine from 1917 to 1921, a confusing mix of Ukrainian independence movements, some of which fought the Polish battle for control of Ukraine. There is also Polish-Ukrainian War, November 1918 to July 1919, as Austria-Hungary, along with Germany and Russia, collapsed at the end of the World War I, the various ethnic minorities in all three fallen empires saw independence. Ukrainian and Poles fought at the 8 months war for control of the area which would be considered southern eastern Poland or northern Ukraine. Also in Ukraine and throughout the Soviet Union, Stalin's secret police, the NKVD, conducted mass killing of anyone considered to be a threat to the Stalin rule. While some Ukrainians did join the Nazi movement, a strong partisan or guerrilla resistance formed to fight the Nazis and work with the Soviet Red Army to drive the Germans out. The war ended in a Soviet victory. Though millions of Ukrainians died, Ukrainian insurgency, 1944 and 1956. Not all Ukrainians welcomed the Soviet back as the Germans retreated. With the CIA's involvement, this insurgency could be considered one part of the larger Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union at the time. The Orange Revolution, a series of political protests in Ukraine from late November 2004 to January 2005, took place as a result of the runoff vote of the 2004 Ukrainian presidential election, which was impacted by the massive corruption, voter intimidation, and direct electoral and fraud. In 2013 and 2014, a new protest movement took to the streets against Yanukovych, due largely to his move to become closer to Vladimir Putin, is Russia, and due to the perception of corruption. As of late February 2014, tensions remain high, with talk in the Russian-speaking part of Ukraine and in Crimea to the south in particular, of resistance to the new Ukraine government and possibility of secession from Ukraine, and what Vladimir Putin and Russia may do if this secessionist thought turn to violence is clear now. We all know what's currently happening in Ukraine right now. Russia occupation of Crimea in late February and early March 2014. On the heel of the protests in Kyiv, Russian military forces began occupying Crimea, and the government of Ukraine seemed unable to respond militarily. And other nations such as the United States and other European Union explored diplomatic and financial ways to punish Russia for this occupation of Crimea, which culminate with uprising in Donbass Oblast in eastern Ukraine, a rebellion that started in 2014, present following the fall of the government pro-Russian militia, primarily in Ukraine East. Began activities designed to weaken the Kyiv government's grip on those areas inhabited more by Russian-speaking Ukrainians. While Russia is supporting the independentists, Moscow denies sending in their troops to aid the Donbass forces, though both the Ukrainian government and some Western sources believe the Russian military forces were operating in eastern Ukraine at the time of the beginning of the war. The Ukrainian government and others are blaming the pro-Russia separatists for the shutdown of the airliner since the initial battle in what became known as the Donbass War. Russian military involvement has become more and more overt, and Ukraine has modernized its military in the years since the loss of Crimea and the occupation of the eastern Donbass region in late 2021 and early 2022. Russian military forces spent several weeks mobilizing along the border with Ukraine, as Moscow engaged in talks with the US and NATO, attempting to sever the worst ties to Ukraine. And the Russian military buildup has created a very real fear of a large-scale invasion with the possible intention of engaging in a major war, which is just happening right now. Russia Federation on February 21, 2022, Russia declared the rebel-held areas independent and openly sent thousands of troops into the disputed region of Ukraine. Russian forces immediately began a massive assault on Ukraine, including missile and air attacks on Ukrainian military facilities and infrastructure, which are still ongoing. And hopefully, these two brothers forgive each other and find a common ground and ditch NATO forever. NATO should be banned. This is Boss Sankara. Make sure you subscribe, hit like, and thanks for watching. Enjoy your day.